What if the human body is just an interface, and the real you doesn't live in your brain? What if scientists have now for the first time found measurable traces of your soul? At CERN, the world's largest physics laboratory, particle physicists are currently studying energies that are not localized in the body. Coherent fields that point to a form of consciousness which doesn't die when the heart stops beating. The line between spirituality and science is beginning to blur, and what was once only belief is now gaining measurable reality. This is not a myth, not a theory, but a moment in which everything begins to change. Welcome to Zeitgeist. I don't know why I've taken this path. I'm not a scientist, not a priest. But for years I've felt something inside me calling, a kind of inner compass, quiet but clear. It feels as if God gave me a voice and a heart that listens, not with the ears but with the soul. I believe we haven't crossed paths by accident. Maybe we're part of the same search, maybe even the same answer. I've chosen to follow this voice, and if you feel this too, then from this moment on, we walk together, spirit to spirit. Welcome to Zeitgeist. 2024. A report from Geneva is making unexpected waves far beyond the scientific community. Inside the world's largest particle accelerator, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, researchers are attempting something that many colleagues would have dismissed as esoteric nonsense only a few years ago. They are investigating human consciousness as a quantum physical field. It started with an anomaly in the so-called Higgs Field. According to the standard model, this field gives every particle its mass. It is everywhere, permeating all things. Yet during a test run in December 2023, scientists noticed that in the presence of living human observers, the energy behavior in one particularly sensitive detector zone changed. They jokingly called it subjective mass. Mass not produced by matter but by conscious perception. What began as a tongue-in-cheek label evolved into a serious research project. Can consciousness, pure non-material experience, create measurable effects in a physical field? The setup was repeated again and again, with placebos, with machines, with sleeping humans. But only conscious, focused attention produced the observed effects. Even more provocative, part of the experiment examined states after clinical death. 2 coma patients were monitored with ultra-sensitive quantum sensors. In one of them, a 72-year-old man, officially showing no EEG activity, researchers detected coherent, recurring oscillations in the electromagnetic spectrum. The signal stood clearly above the noise. They recorded it as an extracorporeal coherent signature, a scientifically unusual term that has since sparked intense debate. The results are not yet officially published, but early internal documents leaked to Nature Physics state that we are on the edge of a new understanding of existence. A quote from project leader Dr. Paolo Ricci is going viral. If these signatures are confirmed, we will have to completely redefine our concepts of life and death. MIT revisited the topic in 2024. In a quantum interference study with human cell cultures, researchers found that biophotonic activity remains coherent for minutes after the cells are biologically dead. The light emitted by neurons does not immediately extinguish. It flickers, like a memory. And here the profound question arises: what if consciousness is not created by the body, but merely resides in it, like a pilot in a cockpit? What if death is not extinction, but simply releasing the seatbelt? Physics remains cautious. Yet it is beginning to sense that consciousness may not be an accident of biology, but a deeper constant of reality, a constant that does not die. Modern physics has turned our worldview upside down. No stone is left standing. What we once called reality, solid, tangible, causal, dissolves in the microcosmos. Quantum particles are not objects but probabilities. They exist only when we observe them. And that brings an ancient mystery back to the heart of science, the role of consciousness. A central experiment that proves this is the famous double-slit experiment. It shows light and matter behave like waves as long as no one observes, then like particles the moment someone looks. The implication is clear. The observer's consciousness influences reality at the most fundamental level. This non-locality, states occurring simultaneously, independent of space and time, is now replicated in labs worldwide, including the Weizmann Institute, the University of Vienna, and the Max Planck Institute. But what does this mean for human consciousness itself? British physicist Sir Roger Penrose, Nobel laureate and longtime collaborator of Stephen Hawking, together with anesthesiologist Dr. Stuart Hameroff, developed the orchestrated objective reduction, or Orch-OR theory. It claims that human consciousness does not arise from neuronal firing patterns but within microtubules, tiny structures in our neurons. There, they argue, quantum events occur: superposition, entanglement, decoherence, not as a byproduct of the brain, but as the very foundation of our experience. The crucial point: these processes are not bound by space or time. They could, in theory, continue without a biological brain. In other words, when the body dies, the quantum-based informational structure, what we experience as I, could detach from matter and transition into another state, perhaps into a new field, perhaps into an entirely different form of reality. Max Tegmark at MIT strikes a similar chord. In his work on consciousness as a state of matter, he proposes that mind is not material. It is the organization of information. And as long as that structure can persist in any form, consciousness does not necessarily end with biological death. So the decisive question is, what dies when we die? The body? Yes. The ego? Perhaps. But the information, the frequency, the light, these may remain. It is no coincidence that more and more physicists, once strict materialists, are now speaking of mind, information, and coherence. They recognize matter is secondary, consciousness is primary, and that changes everything. What would people say if they were briefly dead and then came back? Would they speak of dreams, of chaotic images, or of something more real than anything they had ever experienced? For decades, doctors and scientists around the world have studied so-called near-death experiences, NDEs. The largest systematic investigation appeared in The Lancet, 2001, led by Dr. Pim van Lommel. More than 300 cardiac arrest patients, many with no prior training or spiritual background, were interviewed, yet their accounts were astonishingly similar. A 2019 meta-analysis by IANDS, International Association for Near-Death Studies, went even further. Over 1,060 documented cases spanning every culture, age group, and faith tradition. The result? 85% described the same core elements: a tunnel, a brilliant light, an overwhelming sense of love and peace, a panoramic life review, non-judgmental, yet deeply understanding. Some spoke of having come home. Others saw beings of light, heard music, or met deceased relatives. Always there was a knowledge beyond knowledge, as if they recognized something they had always known. The most moving reports come from children who possess no religious or cultural vocabulary, yet tell the same story. Little Matthew from North Carolina, WBTV Charlotte, 2017, just 2 years old, uttered a single sentence after resuscitation: "The light man held me, and Mommy still needs me." Or Colton Burpo, whose story became famous through the book Heaven is for Real. After emergency surgery in 2003, he said he had met his sister, the one his parents had never brought into the world because she died in utero. Colton described details no one had told him. His parents were stunned. How can this be? How we dismiss these events as mere hallucinations. We miss the crucial points: their depth, their consistency, and their transcultural structure. Whether in the Tibetan Bardo Thodol, the Egyptian Duat, or Christian visions of the afterlife, we find the same map: a passage, a light, a test, a reunion. It is as if every religion and culture is describing the same invisible river, only in different words, as if what the returned describe is not personal fantasy, but collective remembering, And perhaps, just perhaps, there is more truth in these stories than our modern minds dare to believe. If your consciousness does not die, if your thoughts shape reality, what does that mean for your life? Modern quantum physics, especially Hugh Everett's many worlds theory and the concept of biocentrism, raises a profound ethical question. What if every decision you make creates a new universe? A 2022 paper from Oxford addressed exactly that, under the term quantum ethics. If you live in a multiverse, you are not just a witness, you are a co-creator, and that changes everything. Studies from the HeartMath Institute, California 2023, show that your heart is more than just an organ. It is an electromagnetic transmitter, radiating a field up to 3 meters beyond your body. In moments of emotional clarity, love, gratitude, peace, your heart generates measurable coherence that can influence others. In states of fear, anger, or stress, this field becomes chaotic. That means your inner state affects your outer environment, scientifically, measurably, for real. You don't shape your reality through wishful thinking, but through coherent intention. When you meditate, pray, or center yourself, you're tuning into a frequency that affects more than what is visible. This isn't esotericism, this is neurocardiology. This is quantum dynamics. And that leads us to perhaps the hardest question of all: what will you do with this truth? Knowing that you are not here by accident, knowing that every thought, every word, every choice leaves a trace in a greater field, not out of fear, but out of awareness. Awakening doesn't mean being better, it means being more conscious with yourself, with others, with your path. You can no longer hide behind the excuse, "I didn't know," because now you do. And that is the beginning of real responsibility. Not as a burden, but as a gift. Because when you realize that you are more than your body, that you are more than a function, and that you are shaping reality, whether you mean to or not, then true change begins, not in the world, but in you. And maybe, just maybe, that's why you're here today, not by chance, but by design. Maybe it's no coincidence that you've watched this video all the way to the end. Maybe there was a voice inside you, quiet yet clear, that reminded you you're more than your body, more than a name, more than a past, more than a thought. If our consciousness continues, if our decisions echo beyond this life, then our responsibility does not end with death. Then every encounter, every intention, every impulse is a seed in this world and beyond. For a long time, I doubted whether I was ready to share this voice, but something, maybe God, placed an ear in my heart, a truth on my lips, and a longing in my soul that says, we are not separate, we are connected. If you feel that, deep inside, then share this video, not for me, but for those who have forgotten who they truly are. Tell me in the comments, what do you think? What do you feel? Have you experienced something you couldn't explain, but never forgot? And if you feel like you belong here, then subscribe to Zeitgeist. Not because you're looking for answers, but because you feel it's time to think bigger. Together, spirit to spirit, your Zeitgeist.